Welcome to this breakout session. As Rachel said, I'm Hillary Blevins, and this session is Who, What, and How, First Steps into Visualizing Your Data. And this session has been designed for people who are new to data visualization and are interested in learning on how to create some basic charts in Excel. We're going to look at how to use Excel to create charts, to answer some common questions about your program, and how to compile those charts into dashboards for decision-making stakeholders. So if you're familiar with the beginning level of Excel charting, I encourage you to check out another session, or you're welcome to stay and share your experience with data visualization as we get to the discussion times. In this session, as we've mentioned before, we're going to be working with information from 2 local non-for-profits, which have been shared with their permission. And the data has been stripped of any identifying personal information, and we've adjusted it as well to fit the information shared in the presentation. So whether it's funders, community partners, organizational decision makers such as board of directors or executive leadership, most stakeholders share common questions about your program. The first question is who. Who questions you may be asked to report on include: who did the agency serve through the program? Who did the agency partner with to offer the program? Or who supported the program financially? So let's look at some demographic data from a youth development program. We're going to start with a chart on the left with categories that are in the rows, and the counts of those are in the column. And this is the default chart on the right that Excel suggests, a pretty standard pie chart. We only have 3 categories, so a pie chart could be a good option. However, I want you to take a look, and I'll give you a few seconds to think about why a pie chart is not a good option in this particular situation. And if you said it's because the transgender slice is so small that it gets lost, you are absolutely right. It's easy to take a glance at this chart and think that we only have 2 sections, and that's not only is it not fair to those that fall into that 3rd category, it's also not being very intentional or transparent with our data. So let's fix that. So this is going to give you some screenshots of step-by-step instructions. And I just want to remind everyone this session is being recorded. We will share the PowerPoint afterwards, so you'll be able to come back to this and follow along if you need a tutorial. We're going to start with making a different chart. We're going to change the chart type to a 2D cluster column, which is up at the top. Once we do that, this is what we get. For starters, it's a whole lot better, but we can keep going. Next, let's change the vertical axis to be more standard. We're going to left click on the vertical axis, right click, and select Format Axis at the bottom of the list. And this will open a window to the right that looks like this. We're going to select the axis option, which is the column chart icon at the top. We're going to change the maximum bounds to 1,000 and change the major units to 200 for this chart. And then we have this chart, and our axis has been changed. All right. Next, we're going to change the colors to match our brand because that makes our chart look more professional. We're going to left click on any column, right click, and then click on Fill. So we're going to select a neutral color. In this case, we're going to use gray, and this changes the colors on all of the columns at once, giving us this. But let's add a highlight color for emphasis. Now we left click twice on the female column to isolate that column, which is the one that we want to change. Right click and click on Fill again and select a highlight color, and we're going to be using a custom color teal this time. And this changes the color on just that one column, which gives us this. We're almost there. We're going to change the title to make our story more clear. We're going to left click twice on the chart title to activate the cursor and add a more descriptive heading. Also, we're going to highlight the first 2 words and change that color of text to match the corresponding column, because this is a great way to draw attention to a specific part of your chart. In fact, when we see the chart, the legend is now redundant. So we left clicked on the legend, right clicked, and chose delete to remove it, giving more space for our chart itself. So here's the final chart. the first default chart we started with on the left and our updated chart on the right. The new version gives us more context through the axis and a descriptive title and more clearly represents all of the categories. Here's another example of the dreaded pie chart. It's difficult for humans to estimate the angles and the small area and the area in a small or curved shapes. So changing this chart, pie chart, to a vertical column chart and their close relations, is going to, their close relations, the horizontal bar chart, are good alternatives to a pie chart when you have more than 3 groups. After using a better pie chart, by using a better chart type, we now are able to see that there are more participants in 2nd grade than kindergarten and 1st, and that there was a dip in participation in 11th grade. These insights could be missed otherwise if we were trying to figure all this out with a pie chart. So we've come to a pause point, and I'll just want to see if there's any questions about answering any who questions in our data. All right, the next question is often what. What community need did the program address? What did participants do through the program? What types of activities did they participate in? What did participants learn through the program? What objectives did we have? And also that were met. So now we're going to look at some data from a summer reading program, and specifically the number of books read and the books donated each year at one particular site. We start with a chart in years, which is in rows, and our counts are in our columns. And we've sorted the years in descending order to make our Excel play nice with our chart. This is the default chart on the right that Excel suggests. It separates the number of books donated each year from the number of books read each year. I'm going to give you a few seconds to look at this chart and think about why this might not be the best chart for us to use, or how we can make it better. This chart to start off with isn't terrible, but it is really difficult to see the total impact, how much exposure the youth have had to books, both donated or read each year. So we're going to make that a little more clear in our next charts. So step 1, we need to use a different chart type to compare the total impact. We're going to change the chart type to a 2D stacked bar, and we immediately get this. This isn't quite what we want, but it's getting closer. So now we're going to move the books read and the books donated to 1 row per year. We left click on the chart design at the top, and then we left click on switch rows or columns, and that produces this chart instead. This is the format that we want, but doesn't have the information that we need. So we're going to add labels to each section, adjust the label font to make it more legible, and then also adjust the axis. First, we left click on one of the blue bar segments. Right click and drag the cursor to the arrow to the right of Add Data Labels to display the submenu, and then left click on the Add Data Labels submenu. We're going to repeat that to all of the orange bar segments as well. Then we're going to left click on the label over the blue bar segment and change the font color to black and the style to bold. This also changes all the labels on the blue bars at once, and we'll repeat the same process to change the orange bar segments. To change the axis, we've seen that before. We left click on the vertical axis, right click and select Format Axis to get the menu. Select Axis Options, which again is the column chart icon, and change the maximum bounds in this case to 1,000 and the major units to 2,000. When we made those adjustments, this is the chart that we have. All right, let's get rid of the default colors. We'll change the colors to match our agency brand. Again, left click on any blue bar, right click and click on Fill, select the brand color. Again, we're going to use teal. This changes all the colors on all the blue bar segments at once, and we'll repeat the change for the orange bar segments to our secondary brand color. In this case, we're going to use the goldenrod. And this is what we have when we have changed the colors. One more step to make this our finished chart, but well, let's change that title. Again, left click twice on the chart to activate the cursor, and we're going to change the heading. When we do, this is what we've got. Now I'll say if this was the chart that we were going to end with, we could change the color of the font in the descriptive text to match the colors of our bars and serve as a legend. We could change the reading part to the teal and the donating to the goldenrod, and then we could get rid of the legend down at the bottom. But we're going to use this chart in a dashboard a little while later, and so we're going to leave that alone just the way it is, so it matches this style that we're using with the other charts as well. So here's the final chart. Here's the default chart with the Excel on the left, our updated chart on the right. The new version gives us more context through descriptive title and the labels. It's also clearer to see the total impact each year and compare the number of books read each year to the number of books donated that year. And this brings us to another good pause point. If there's any questions at this point, we could address those. Okay. Our next question is how? How did participants change or develop as a result of the program? How did the program compare to similar programs held elsewhere? Or how have the program results changed over time? We're going to continue with our summer reading data and see how participants achieved the program outcomes. Again, we'll start with a chart in years in rows and counts in the columns. And again, the years have been sorted in descending order. This is a default chart that Excel suggests. It's a lot similar to the bar chart that we saw, but now it's a column chart. It separates the average change in sight word recognition each year from the average change in words read per minute each year. And again, take a few seconds and think about why this might not be the best chart or how we can fix it. All right, this is hard again to see the total impact of the improvement in literacy skills each year. And also the keystone, the legend at the bottom has the years going in the opposite order. So that's something we definitely want to see if we can fix. All right, so step one, we're going to change this to a 2D line chart. Once we do that, we immediately get this. Again, not quite what we want, and our years at the bottom are still backwards. So let's fix that. We're going to change the horizontal axis to reflect the years by clicking on the chart design and then clicking on the switch columns and rows. As soon as we do that, we get something that's closer to what we want. However, it's a little hard to tell, especially on the orange, where each year ends. The blue, it's a little easier because it's more angular, but the orange is more of a straight line. So let's add some markers so we know where we are each year. We're going to left click on the end of one of the blue line segments. This opens the Format Data Series window on the right, which looks like this. We're going to select the fill in line menu, which is the paint can icon. We're going to select the marker menu and open the marker options. Select the shape from the built-in type drop-down menu that you prefer, and repeat for the orange line segments, selecting a different marker shape. We're also going to change the axis of this to a standard range. Left click on the vertical axis, right click and select the format axis. In this case, we're going to set the maximum bounds to 20 and the major units to 2. That will give us this. We've added the circles and the diamonds, and we've also changed the axis to end at 20, which is more of a round number for us to work with. All right, once again, let's change the colors to match the brand. This, because we have the markers and the lines, it's a little bit different. First, we need to change the markers. We're going to left click on any blue marker, right click and click on fill, select a brand color, again our teal, and this changes the colors on all the blue markers at once. We're going to repeat the change for the orange markers to a secondary color of goldenrod. But we still have to change the color of the line. So now we're going to left click on the end of one of the blue line segments again, and this opens that Format Data Series window again on the right. Select the Fill in Line menu from the paint can. Now we select the Line menu and open the line options. Select the solid line and then choose the color to match the marker color. And we'll repeat that for the other line as well. Once we've changed those, this is what we've got. Lastly, we need some more content here for sure. Again, left click twice on the chart to activate the cursor and add a more descriptive heading. This is the heading that we've chosen. And now we'll take a look at our final. Here's the default chart from Excel on the left and our updated chart on the right. The new version gives us more context through a descriptive title. It is also easier to see the total impact each year and compare the participants' achievement year over year. Again, as Jim mentioned, this chart works well for us in this case because we only have 2 items that we're comparing. If we had a lot more than 4, we'd want to consider something else, more like a bar chart. Do we have any questions on how that we can, answering the how question? All right, we'll move on. Once we've created several charts to answer individual questions, we can put them together to tell a bigger data story through the dashboards. Data dashboards bring several visualizations together, connecting related but separate data, often across departments or work functions. These reports can tell a more complete story and be an insightful tool for decision makers. So let's take a closer look at a data dashboard, focusing on the participant demographics. The charts at the top of this example show 2 cluster column charts of demographic data by gender and school grade. We've highlighted both the areas that are the largest and made the text to match the colors to pull that information out. Our middle section of our dashboard shows a clustered bar chart of racial and ethnic demographic data, also highlighting the largest percentage groups. And the bottom section of the example includes 2 clustered column charts with information about socioeconomic segments and zip codes of residents. Here we're using 2 colors to call out 2 different data points of comparison in the zip code chart. With all of this information in one place, decision makers and stakeholders can quickly get a deeper understanding of who is participating in the program, the areas of strong representation, and any opportunities for growth in the program. Let's look at another dashboard example with our summer reading data. If you create a dashboard layout that works for your agency, you can use it as a template to create a series of dashboards to compare data across time, year to year, or locations, our site versus a different site, or different zip codes or different counties, or delivery methods. Particularly in this time of change, being able to share what has happened in person and what has happened virtually might also be really helpful. We'll take a closer example of these charts as well. The charts at the top of this example show our what, the quantifiable outputs of the program, through a stacked bar chart on the left and a clustered column chart on the right. The charts at the bottom of this example show us how, the outcomes that are created by the program, through a line chart on the left and a stacked column chart on the right. And you can see this one on the right is a little bit different. We've also added a third outcome of reading engagement. But the one on the left is the exact line chart that we made just a few minutes ago. So we've considered how choosing chart types can help us answer organizational questions and lead to new insights that we might have missed. We've walked through how to create a column, bar, and line charts in Excel, and we've looked at combining charts into dashboard reports for stakeholders and decision makers. And this brings us to the end of the prepared material, but for the time that we have left, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and if you've got thoughts about how you might apply this information to your agency's reports, I encourage you to share that as well.
Great, thanks so much, Hillary, for the presentation and really the nitty-gritty of how to kind of change those pieces in Excel. If folks either want to put it in the chat or want to unmute themselves, and maybe you have some data that you're curious about how how to even maybe put that into a chart form, now would be a great time to write that down or speak up. Well, folks are maybe thinking about questions. What I will do is I'm going to put a question in the chat. And what is one takeaway from today's session, either the initial presentation or breakout, that was helpful for you? So if you can put your responses in the chat. It can just be one word or maybe a phrase. Just help us to kind of know if we were on the right track or not.
And I would add, if there are other questions or types of charts that you'd like to see considered, if this session was offered again, something that I may have missed, I would love to hear your feedback on that as well.
Great, thanks Diane for your comment. Well, as others are possibly formulating theirs, I'm also going to put a link to, and we'll send this out via email too with all the PowerPoints and stuff, but we'd also love to have have you all fill out this survey that's in the chat. Julie, I need something much more basic starting from the very beginning. I'm completely lost as to how to start making a chart or graph. Thank you. Okay, Julie, that's helpful to know.
Mm-hmm. Well, the biggest thing, Julie, is to really get your data in those types of charts that I showed. Focus on something small. You could see the examples I used didn't use a lot of data. We weren't looking at 15 outcome achievement scores over 5 different years. Start something small and immediate, and then play. And it's hard to do a demonstration in a static method like PowerPoint, but really once you get this presentation and the notes, it will walk you through everything. I really tried to do a good job of taking those screenshots and including whether you right click or left click here, and so I really hope it can be a tutorial for you to walk through that and get started with it. So yeah, and start somewhere. Excel can do a lot of good things for you, and start small. And as you get more comfortable with just some basic charts, then you can start turning things on an axis and adding stacked charts or different things like that, and play with it. So don't feel like you have to be able to do everything all at once. Focus on a few small things that will move you forward, and when you're comfortable with that, find a few more small things that'll move you forward from there, and you'll get there. So I'm completely self-taught. I started in Excel. We had access to Looker and Tableau, and have learned how to do that, but I still predominantly prefer Excel because that's what I'm comfortable with the most. So you've taken your first step.
Thanks, Matthew, for your comment too. Just making them easier to look at, more visually appealing. I agree with that. That's something that I learned today too.
Yeah. Once you learn how to change the font and you learn how to change the color, it's amazing how simple that can be. That can take something that looks average, not bad, not good, but really make it branded and professional for your organization in a few clicks of a button. So that's a really powerful thing that is really a good step to go from kind of very, very basic beginner to that, you know, more accomplished beginner as well. Yeah.
We've got another question from Matthew. After creating
Sure.
charts on Excel, is it easy to turn those charts into a presentation / PowerPoint?
Yes, and that is one reason why I like to still work in Excel, because often, and I will going to say often because I have run into a few wonky bits sometimes, but most of the time, once you get your chart made in Excel, you can copy that chart and paste it into PowerPoint, and often it will stay where it is. Sometimes the color or the font size, depending on your default settings in PowerPoint, may adjust a little bit, and you'll have to go in and tweak those within the PowerPoint. But it's the same process as in the PowerPoint with the clicking, and it's really pretty easy. I did all of these charts in Excel, and I copied and pasted them all into PowerPoint. So yes, very easy to work with. You can also copy them from Excel into Word if you're more comfortable with that, or if you happen to have Publisher and you work with that for any design projects, they will also go right into Publisher. So they move really easily between all of the Microsoft Office suites. Oh, and another thing is if you make that really big in Excel, or place them small next to each other, and you play a little bit with your margins and your print screen, your page settings, you can print those dashboards in, just design those in Excel, and that's actually what I did. And you'll get we'll share those handouts of those two dashboards so you can see them on the one pager in a bigger method, but all of those were also designed in Excel as well. So you can make it work for you.
Great, thanks Matthew for that question.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give just maybe another minute or so for any additional questions for Hillary on what she's presented today. Otherwise, feel free to type additional takeaways from today's session in the chat. And as you're doing that, just a reminder that we will send out an email with the recordings of both the main session and then the breakout sessions, along with the PDFs of the PowerPoints and of course the materials, as Hillary said, in PDF form. Sherry liked how descriptive everyone is on the difference of the charts and graphs. Great visualization on the importance of creating these. Thanks. All right. Thanks, Sherry. Appreciate that comment.
Welcome.
Matthew's got one more question. So do you happen to know if Google Sheets or Docs work similarly? That's a great question for those who don't have access to Excel.
Sure. That is, and I will tell you, we're mostly a Microsoft product company, so that's what we're most familiar with. And so I'm doing Microsoft Docs in other kind of at home and some volunteer work that I'm doing. And so I'm learning that. From what I understand, yes, it does. Sometimes the directions are a little different because obviously it is a different product, but usually you can find the functions that you're looking for. I would say, I'm not 100% sure, but if I had to guess, you may not have as much functionality in changing the colors and really kind of tweaking it exactly what you want, but you certainly may, and I may just not have found them there. But yeah. From what I've seen when it comes to charting and formatting and other more mathematical applications, Google Sheets works really similar to Excel. So I would think that almost all the functionality would be there, especially for what we presented in this program as well.
Yeah, good question.
Mm-hmm.
So many folks now I feel like are moving to Google Docs or Sheets or that kind of whole platform to do that work and share it across teams. So.
Oh, I know. I do surveys, and I've worked in Tableau, which is Tableau and Qualtrics. Qualtrics is a survey program, and I had to have my 12-year-old daughter show me how to use Google Forms to do something because I was like, I don't know how to do it. Does it do it the same thing? And she's like, Mom, just let me do it. I had it done in 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah. So it's nice to have a pretty robust program, more as accessible as that is.
Great. Well, why don't we close it there? So again, we'll send it out, but if you haven't, if you want to click on the link that I put in the chat with the survey, we ask that you just fill that out and help us figure out what would be helpful in the future for you as a training around this. And I just want to say an immense thank you to Hillary for helping us put this together. This was something that we thought about way back. If any of you were involved in the M3 huddles back in January, and have been working on kind of through COVID. So appreciate your expertise and also just your experience that you bring from the youth work field to this work. So thank you all for joining. We aren't going back to the large group, so feel free to just leave whenever you're ready. So thanks so much.